If you're a college football fan, week 2 did not disappoint. There wasn't a ton of, there was some big games, but there were just a lot of upsets in games that not a lot of people will get to some of those. But we'll start with the big game of the week with the marquee matchup. Texas and Michigan was a snooze fest, and that's because Texas looked like one of the best teams in the country, while Michigan looked like a team that might not win 8 or 9 games. I mean, Michigan offensively, we knew they were going to struggle, and they struggled, I think, worse than most people. I mean, They ran it a little bit, but they have absolutely no quarterback play. I think it's worse than a lot of people could have imagined. And I think when you have that poor quarterback play, it's going to be tough for you to win games, especially when their defense got exposed for not being perhaps as good as I thought, or a lot of people thought going into this game. I think you got to give the flowers to Texas. I mean, they dominated the line of scrimmage. Quinn Ewers looked very good defensively. They were fantastic. They did all they needed to do. They forced turnovers. They pretty much played a perfect game on the road in a hostile environment. And Michigan looked like an absolutely pathetic team. They're ranked number 17 in the AP poll. They're not the 17th best team in the country. They're not even close. They shouldn't even be ranked. And I know it's just a Texas game, but still, they shouldn't be ranked.
No, and by the end of the year, they won't be ranked in the top 25. And I don't think, we talked about it at the beginning of the year. What top 10 team is most likely to fall out of the top 25? There were a couple. Florida State.
It was Florida State.
It was
Michigan.
pretty much obvious.
Florida State, Michigan, and right now both of them shouldn't be in the top 20. One of them is not, but the other is very close to joining them.
Correct. I am not surprised whatsoever what happened, what transpired on Saturday in Ann Arbor, and I don't know how anybody really could be surprised. I think the only surprise would be how badly Texas beat them, but I didn't, this wasn't a shock that Michigan went out there and poo-pooed in their pants. I've been saying it all offseason, said it leading up to the week, that Michigan is not the same. This is not a national. This is LSU 2020. They're a completely different team. They don't have LSU still had their head coach, but this Michigan does not have their head coach. They don't have their quarterback. They've lost 17 different starters, and typically of a program like Georgia's 2021 team lost 15 starters or whatever, then went out and won a national championship. But they had Kirby Smart. This is and they had their quarterback. This is a completely different Michigan program. I said it was like one great movie. You're trying to make a sequel without the director and without the lead actor. And it's awful. It's completely like Michigan is a 8-win football team, where on the other side of the ball, I think this is a story of it's somewhere in the middle, where Texas is a damn good football team. But I'm not super convinced, because I was never that high on Michigan in the first place, where everybody's ready to crown Texas better than Georgia. I'm not quite there yet. I got to see more, because I just didn't think Michigan had it from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my next question.
Is Texas as good?
Is Texas? I mean, listen, if you go based on that game and you think Michigan is a pretty good team, Texas is a world beater. Right. They should be right there in the same conversation with Ohio State, Georgia, which some people already had them in there. We both were lower on Texas, but listen, I would be lying if I said I didn't watch that game and said, oh, maybe Texas is legitimate. I think the most impressive aspect of that performance was their offensive line. I mean, they bully, and Michigan has some guys on their defensive line. Yeah, they may not be as good, but the way they bullied them to say, hey, we can do whatever we want. If we want to pass the ball, you ain't going to sack us. If we want to run the ball, we're going to run it down your throats. I think that was the most impressive aspect, is that Texas offensive line looked like what we thought LSU was going to look like against USC, right? They went out there and attacked the guys that were in front of them. And that's something that, Texas has lacked over the years, like guys that are just mean up front and want to kill you and enforce their will. They've had teams that can throw the ball and stuff. And last year, Quinn Ewers and Adonai Mitchell and Xavier, they absolutely imposed their will. They wanted to make Michigan feel them. That was the most impressive aspect.
Last year, they ran the ball down Alabama's throat at the end of that game. They ran the clock out. So we always knew they could do it. Could they do it consistently against a team like Michigan, who does have, I don't think their defense is crap by any means, but everybody, calling it the 85 Bears and everything like that, I was just a little bit premature for me. What I think is most impressive outside of the offensive line, outside of everything from this game, Steve Sarkisian is a dude. That guy is right there with Lincoln Riley. There is very few people who can call a game like Steve Sarkisian. That guy was in his bag. He is so damn good at one of the most impressive things for me of an offensive coordinator or play caller, it's not just the play to play where, you can call one play, get a first down. It's like the entire body of work where you're throwing one thing out there to get the defense thinking one thing. That way in the second quarter, third quarter, or fourth quarter, you run something different that they think is coming and it's just completely different. And it works like that. It's like a chess match. You're setting up one thing to use another. That is what Steve Sarkisian is so good at. It's like what Kyle Shanahan's good at. Sean McVay's good at it. The great guys are good at it. Lincoln Riley is a guy who's not necessarily good at it. He just has a bag full of tricks that constantly work, where Steve Sarkisian is throwing one thing to throw another one later in the game. The best pitchers in baseball do that kind of thing. And I think Steve Sarkisian is in his absolute bag. That is the best thing Texas has going for them. If they can, if they want to make a national championship run, that's the guy who's going to have to, pretty much lead them there. Not Quinn Ewers. Yeah. Like, I don't think Quinn Ewers was, I know the stat line, people are going to call me crazy, but like, if you watch that game, it's not like Quinn Ewers made a ton of difficult high-level Sunday throws. He was either one, throwing up to wide open guys, or two, he was missing some pretty difficult passes. I mean, he made a couple of good throws, but most of the praise should be on Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, I mean, if you go look at that game, especially in the first half, I mean, every time Texas got on third down, Steve Sarkisian had an answer to whatever mission was going to throw at
whether it was running the ball or throwing the ball.
It would be 3rd and 6. Yeah, we'll just run it right here and get it. Like, everything, like, it was a masterclass from Steve Sarkisian. I don't have too many questions. I mean, maybe you have some slight questions about Quinn Ewers in big games and stuff that, and against elite defenses. I think about the only question I have left with Texas is what we haven't seen, and that's facing a good offense. Facing a good offense. I'm saying Michigan hasn't. I still have questions about Texas's defenses. Michigan's not going to answer any of those questions. They never were going to answer any of those questions. It was one of the worst offenses performance I've seen from a big program in quite some time. So I want to see that defense tested. But listen, as a Texas hater, I got to give them their flowers. I got to give them some credit. They did everything they needed to do. Steve Sarkisian was great, and they looked like a national title contender.